Hello, everybody. Welcome back to IDAGIO Live and to our workshop on the Bach cello suites. Today, Bourrées from the fourth suite. And my guest will be the conductor Sascha Goetzel. He will be with us in about 15 minutes. Yes, we have had a lot of episodes now, and there is already a lot I've said about structures of the pieces, or particularly of these penultimate movements, the minuets, the bourrées. Nevertheless, I must say that I am particularly fascinated by the structure of this fourth bourrée, which is bourrée of the fourth suite, which is an intimidating movement for a lot of us cellists, because it's we already talked about this. The tonality of the fourth suite is very demanding. It needs a lot of stretches and so this is one of the movements that we cellists we know it's going to be when we play the Bach cycle, the six suites. It's going to be one of the moments where we are really we have to be really well wound up and knowing what we do technically. So I'm going to talk about this as well tonight. But maybe I will just start by playing the first part of it, and I will comment a little bit on the structure. So this first part is very straightforward, very quite simple seemingly. It starts with typical two-bar structures of the bourrée. So 1, 2, 1. And then again. Here comes the first little tip for our cellist friends out there. Most of my students and myself, for many years when I was learning this piece, I had a difficulty because of this repeating rhythm to really give immediately a sense that we are going towards the second bar, and the difficulty lies there. There are two things you should watch in terms of your bow technique, which is don't immediately give too much bow on the first downbeat, so that and then approach the frog as you go to the second bar. So that you can give a sense of direction. And another thing which is important is that don't give too many accents on each of these quarter notes. So the danger is a bit. Of course, I am exaggerating, but this can happen that you end up not having enough hierarchy between 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 to give really immediately install this two-bar structure, the groove of the day. So because then when you install this, 1, second time, and then we are still in a two-bar structure, but of course different. And this time we repeat what we just did. And when you repeat like this, of course, remember it's a dance, so you want to have some kind of symmetry of answering, questioning, answering, or saying and commenting. So find a way to enjoy the same rhythm in ideally in a very different way, or more than that, not only in a contrasting way, but in a mirror way. So I think the most obvious the first time around is to do a little echo effect. So and then he does the same thing again, a little echo or a little duality thing, but twice shorter, just one bar, and then cadence. So the things have been really installed. We know where we are by now. The second half is going to be very varied and very interesting. As always, Bach starts seemingly with the same material, but immediately he starts, varying. In this case, he's going to reverse these scales of 16th notes that we've had all the way through, and they are not going down. And after having done that, once up, one down, he's going to do a sort of knitting by doing down, up, down, up, and then only going down and only with the soprano. So we have done our modulation to C minor, and what did he do is that with this little smaller playing of question and answer, what he does very often, by taking a seemingly smaller element, he will create actually a longer phrase than we are used to. And then by repeating only one of the motifs, he will really finish up this longer phrase. And then, of course, he wants to sort of calm us down because we did something which was unexpected, this long phrase and a bit dramatic in C minor. So here we seem to be again in our main motif, remember? So, but on the arrival beat, he creates something that brings us further in a totally different way. That's the first time that we have this motif in this way. So by doing this, he has at the what was supposed to be 1 and 2 and 1 on this one arrival one where we usually were used to jump, as a imaginary dancer that we are when we listen to this music. He creates something very melodic that sort of postpones the arrival note by one bar. And then he comments. I think it's so charming. And now what does he do? He takes again his 16th notes motif, only this. Remember, we had this already in the first part, but with little echoes. And then again. And then he starts something new, which is going to be a long phrase, which is going to be a stretta, something which is going to start very melodic and in a way tranquillo, and he's going to make it tighter and tighter, and giving us a little feeling of roller coaster when by the end. So we start, which is actually also something new in the piece. Then, how do you say, a variation of it, sorry, an ornamented version of it is what I wanted to say, which is, so which already gives a sense of acceleration because of this ornamentation. And then our motif, but on the beat. These 16th notes, they were almost always a beat. And this time, and stretta, that means now we have every half bar something, and now only 16th notes that roll around themselves. So now I will play this whole passage without commenting all the time, so that you see how Bach brings us through many different sceneries. I will start again. And so you see how he comes back to the beginning, except we arrive. So, like unseemingly, we are back to our beginning motif, and then descending scale. Well, if you remember, we had about, I think, something like 14 bars before. We had exactly this, except where did we go from there the first time? So instead of this time around, he repeats this as though we would not know how to go on this time around. And then he's bringing sort of little coda, which is so charming, by very charming syncopations. Which replaces, it's the equivalent of the hemiola in a ternary rhythm. You know, when Bach towards the end brings hemiola to sort of, in a way, to prepare his dancers, his virtual dancer, to get ready for the end. So, and now conclusion. So, a very straightforward, simple music, but as you see, with a lot of construction, which gives storytelling, a lot of charm, and yeah, I find this Bourrées really I love it very much. One little tip to my cellist friends. Many of my students come to me and say they have and they have sometimes memory worries in this fourth suite. In the prelude, there are a few traps, you know, where it seems to be the same music, but it goes somewhere else. I just mentioned now that there is this passage in this Bourrées. It comes twice within the same second part of this Bourrées. So it can be, it's one of these traps that you have. So my little advice to you is be aware that you are going to have this motif, that the first time around you are going to go in a certain direction, that you're going to start something again and want to go on, and that the second time around, as if yourself you were surprised that you were playing this again, that do repeat and look, as you know, be aware yourself that the music expresses, so to say, that you are looking for something, and that you are going to go to something which is quite unexpected. Now, before we talk to Sasha, there is a Bourrées 2, of course. In the Bourrées, there is always a Bourrées 2. Remember that in the first three suites, we have Menuet in the first suite, Menuet in the second suite, and Bourrées in the third suite. In all three first suites, this duality of Menuet 1, Menuet 2, or Bourrées 1, Bourrées 2, was, amongst many other characterizations, Bach was playing on the tonality, major minor or minor major, in order to play this contrast and have the same rhythmical structure with two very different characters. From this suite on, fourth suite, fifth suite, sixth suite, Bach doesn't play with this minor major, and he does something very different. Of course, in each suite, something different. In this case, we had a first bourrée, the one we just talked about, which is quite developed. For a bourrée, it's a very rich movement, quite long. The second part, as you could see, a lot happens and everything. What does he do with the bourrée 2? Super short, minimalistic, so already one big contrast. Extremely short, motivically, very, very, very minimalistic as well. So I played the first part of it. This was our first part, already repeated. Imagine. So see how short it is. And did you hear how the motive is really basically around 3 notes? Well, 4 notes, okay. So really a Dorf song, you know. And then I find it amazing how Bach manages to compose something which is super simple, and yet incredibly charming. Not that it should contradict itself, but anyways, I want to say that, and I wanted to tell to my cellist friends, important in this bourrée too, remember that your bass and your melody shouldn't have the same length. So already when you do this, don't play double stops and which stay flat. Always stay longer on your melody and let your bass resonate. And then when you play your bass, also stay longer on the upper voice. There are two very good arguments for this. The first one is that imagine it was two players, one playing the melody and the other one playing the bass. Do you want the bass player playing? You want him to play, to leave oxygen in the room for the melody to fully be expressive. In the second part, two last little things, and I see it's already almost 20 past, so I want to have enough time to talk to Sasha. But there is this difficult beginning of the second part. Some people have big hands and they play it like this. I play it with the thumb. And also here, enjoy the fact that you want to do good music and therefore don't play the lower voice as long as the upper one. Enjoy that. So, which leaves you enough room to liberate your third finger. And here, a little detail. Remember, I think it's one of the things we want to talk about with Sasha, and I will be interested to have his input on this. But here, my bass is and then I come back to my theme. So enjoy the fact that the bass stops grooving in a way. and play your eighth notes. Uh, let them fly. Let them fly. Meaning, all time wise and sound wise. So please don't play. Or don't play equal eighth notes. Swing with your bass line. And then you get caught again from your flying. You get caught by the bass. And this is the end of our technical segment. And now is the time to invite Sasha Getzel to join us. Dear Sasha, are you there?
Yes. Hi.
Ah,
Good to see you,
wonderful.
Jean-Guihen.
Good evening,
Good
dear
evening.
Sasha. Welcome to our workshops. Thank you so much for taking the time. I
Thank
know
you for
that
having me.
I'm very, very, very lucky because from Saturday you'll have an absolutely crazy schedule. Maybe you want to tell us about it afterwards. But I was lucky that you had this free hour for us. So fantastic. Um, Sasha, I would like to start with this by actually by telling our viewers. In fact, I have the feeling we know each other somehow super well, and somehow we do. But even though we actually shared the stage only once, but what a memory! It was a Haydn concerto in Paris with with the Orchestre de Chambre de Paris. And the reason I mention it is that um, I have an anecdote. Maybe I didn't tell you this that I want to share with our audience because I think it has to do with what we talk about here in this workshop, and maybe we might even talk about a bit more about it. So we. We were in the rehearsal with the orchestra, with the Orchestre de Champagne, and uh, you were not yet happy with the liveliness that you knew was in this music, and you were not enough having it in the in their playing. And you know, it's probably the concerto I've played most in my life. And I remember you know, doing it with Tom Kopman, or you know, with many people who are historically informed, and they would, you know, talk about historic historic knowledge in performance, you know, the what we know nowadays about articulation, about this and this, all of this you did. But the key moment where the orchestra actually suddenly, where they're playing actually transformed, is when you told them, and I was very surprised in the moment. You said, "You guys, it's actually rock. This music is actually." I don't. I'm not sure. You will correct me if you said it's rock music, or if you said it's even pop music, even if you dare to say this. But I remember you said, imagine, guys, that you are with your electric guitar, and and the guy playing percussion in the background, and he's giving you the beat, and come on, give it to me, guys, you know. And suddenly they started to play this music with so much more life, and uh, so do we uh, tend to forget too often that baroque music rocks?
Thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate that. And I remember the concert. It was outstanding. And also how your performance melted with what you called this rock and roll groove. Um, well, I think in general, the question, to go a little bit more deep from the beginning, is why are we making music? The music is a form of communication, and the music is a form also of a communication which gives us the chance to experience emotions and energy um, away from a given cultural communication. So, what does that mean? When I go to the museum and I look at the Bruegel painting of the Tower of Babel, in the biblical sense that God says you're not allowed to do that, and from now on your punishment will be that all your cultures will have different languages. I think that the humans didn't understand each other anymore, and they went all the different directions and started their own societies. But in a way, the humans succeeded actually with feeling each other's emotions through a language. And this language is music and the arts. So I think we should start by touching the base of why do we have music, and especially when we talk about baroque music, or in Haydn's case, it's, let's say, the early classics. What are we talking about? What is this music? I mean, what kind of brink of history are we? We are not just talking about any kind of music, we're just not talking about a bubble. Somebody comes in his mind and he throws it on social media and says, I believe, we should sit more at the beach. I mean, it has something different, fundamentally, emotionally touching. So why I'm making this long introduction is because I had to justify myself now in front of everybody's watching why I'm saying rock and roll. Because classical musicians nowadays, they go through a very hard training. It's a very long training. It's very demanding. And most of us are not actually trained to feel free again on stage. So this means they think that they have a supposed to be pattern to perform in a certain way, that they will be accepted in their quality from the public or also from the colleagues. But of course, if we don't feel the supposed to be patterns in interpretation with the right energy, we will not succeed, because a pattern always can be exchanged with another pattern, but the energy of each individual doing the music is unique. This is a philosophical approach, but of course it's logic, because you sit there and you play the cello suites with your style. I loved, by the way, what you say, but we can go into that interpretation thing right after. But this is really important for me personally. We have to get back to build an emotional reason why the people are going to concerts. This is the reason why we are on stage. If we cannot attach to the souls of the people, we are not doing the communication of music right, because music is written as a communication of the souls. So this whole rock and roll thing, which I used from time to time when I feel an orchestra like the Orchestre Chambre de Paris is playing really, really well, but actually they are not bringing us emotionally on the edge of that music was at that time when it was performed, then I'm going extremes in my metaphors, in my metaphors, what I'm telling the orchestra. Sometimes I talk about Lord of the Rings, I talk about the dark side of the force in the universe, and sometimes I'm taking other metaphors depending where I am and where I can pick up the musicians, but just that they feel free to give the most important thing to the music, their soul. And this was also at that time. And then to come to the second thing, that the reasoning, so the intellectual background for doing this, of course, is, as we are talking about the Bach cello suites now, is where is the music coming from? We have, as interpreters, to do our math. We have to understand the music DNA. So where's the origin of this music? We heard a wonderful bourrée. So what kind of dance is the bourrée? You said it beautifully. We have to feel the jumping. We have to feel the actually going in a circle of people, holding each other not by the hand, but really feeling free of a lightness. That's why we have the upbeat in the bourrée. So it's really important that we understand the concept, the DNA concept of music. And when we talk about this, this is high romantic era. We're talking, we are not quite sure when they were written, but let's say around the 7010th. Yeah. So we are talking about an era where all of this Baroque music, which came from the Generalbass, very strict, starts to be free in the style of express certain sentiments of the people. This is very important. Baroque music, all those, what you described before was beautiful. Those two people talking, the dialogue talking. So you put it at the baseline, you put it at the upper line. What are we talking about is the beginning of the total independence of instrumental music, leading directly to the sonaten Hauptsatzform in the classics, where you have always a first motive, a second motive, then in the development section, they have a big conflict, and we are waiting for the conflict to end to start the reprise. So basically, we have the beginning of the independence of the melodies, of the lines, and in the harmonies, the Generalbass, which is very important, the Generalbass, and maybe I at that time also wanted to go with the Haydn cello concerto there, the Generalbass was the beginning of the freedom of sentiment in the chromatic way of the music. So we're using the chromatic to express a sentiment in the music, whatever it is. The Baroque music used very strongly the form of the chromatism within the music, And the classic took away all this and just focused on the form, inventing, like Beethoven, for example, when he wrote his first symphony, the beginning of the fast movement of the first symphony in the Allegro is a pure scale. It's a C major scale. Ya-da-da-da-dim, ba-da-dim, ba-da-di-da-da-di-da-da-dim, bum-bum-bum-bing. So when we take this as the absolute high point of the classic era, so we can say that coming out of the Baroque, the classic changed in form, in structure, freedom of form, so to say, and the Baroque used this very strict form, but inside all these figures, all these abbreviaturas, everything, they have to be free and really grooving and in the rhythm, rocking. So this is my first answer, a long answer. I'm sorry, it was a long monologue, but it's important because I want everybody to understand this is an issue nowadays. I think we have too much fetishism going around in terms of sound. So we want so much to create a certain sound because we heard it somewhere and then we want to recreate it. But most of the time, the interpret who did the sound the first time had a reason why to put that sound there. And we loved that sound so much because this interpreter was connecting to something very strongly, which was intellectually recognized by everybody and by himself, first of all, herself. So we cannot just reproduce sounds in a fetish way. We just go to extremes which become empty and exchangeable. Everybody can produce a most extreme sound. Sultasto on one hand, when we really go more and more to the fingerboard with more speed in the strings, and then on the other hand, we go more to the bridge and we add so many overtones that at one point there are more overtones than the actual sound. So we can talk about all of this, but always when you interpret, this is from a conductor's point of view and a former violinist, I urge all of you as an interpreter, make it a reason energetically why you produce that sound. And then it will be much more convincing. And as a listener, please not only listen to the sounds themselves, because you would become a fetishist. Please feel what you feel with that sound and make this your primer move of enjoying the music. Because otherwise it's just a painting with a couple of colors, but it has no connection to the DNA of the music itself.
Fantastic. It's so great. No, thank you so much for developing this so important aspect of as like a central tool on the way to the possibility to make an authentic interpretation, which is bringing the music really to life. I mean, to its full potential. You listening to you about the General Bass and this thing made me reminded me that there is one metaphor that I use a lot with my students when we are. Well, let's talk again about Haydn concerto. I'm thinking of the Haydn D major, particularly where the in the first movement there is a lot of moment where the harmonic pace is very, very noble, very quiet, very long, and we play a million notes within it. Yes, and I to help them to feel exactly what you said, this to feel this freedom and of the small notes. Basically, I tell them, it's like all these words we say, all these notes we say. It's in a way we are very privileged. We have the role of the poet in this piece, but if the poet starts to be just exactly being fetishist or being fascinated by his own words, they will be totally empty. The whole point is that each word that a poem is going to put down in his poetry has to be his the expression of his utmost love for what he sees, what is when he goes in the forest, and when he goes out. And in this case, in our case, this is the harmony. That so each of these millions of scales of notes of things, they will make sense if they are connected to the harmony. They are expressing what the harmony tells us. And therefore, they have to be exactly, as you said, to be free, to swing within the harmony. Uh, I wanted briefly before, so you mentioned that we thought, you said you might want to talk also about some sources that we have uh, to to help us on this path. And this thing again about like these scales, for example, this little scale at the end of the second bourrée on one harmony, uh, who was it? Was it Quantz, or was it Leopold Mozart, who talked about uh, actually bad notes and good notes? Was
Yeah, it's
you
Quantz, I think. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
long
talking,
story.
but meaning,
I
of
read
course,
those books, yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I think it was Quantz. But yes, I think this duality or bipolarity, let's say,
Mhm.
is the most important element of music. So doesn't matter if you're an interpreter or a listener, always you should look to build the conflict. If there is no conflict, there is no resolution. So if the more tension we can create in the music, the more satisfied we will be with the resolution after. It's normal. That's in the music, the driving force is the conflict. And I think that these ugly notes or bad and good notes is the same, really the same with the rhythms, right? We say heavy or more prominent beats and less prominent beats. So when we
Mhm.
talk, I mean, in the Bourrée, it's clear we have a square one. So the first and the third one would be, the most important ones, and two and four
Mhm.
not so important unless there is a dissonance. So already we can play around with this a lot. But when we have a three pattern, then already the one should be definitely the most
Oh,
important. Yeah,
excuse me.
and two and three less important. But then we have to see how was it danced. I mean, in a
Mhm.
suite, when we look in a suite, we have the Bourrée, Allemand, Coran, Sarabande, Chic. I wrote a little bit down before I was talking to you because
Mhm.
myself have not looked into the suite for such a long time. When I was a
Mhm.
violinist, with the sonatas, partitas, we're also not going into the suite business. I mean, suite business is a cello business for
Mhm.
instrumentalists.
Mhm.
For conductors, it's different. We have, of course, many suites with this nothing else than a connection of dances. And also in the classic, the suite starts to be a freedom in form. So it's changed a lot. Already, by the way, Bach with the violin sonatas and partitas changed the suite style. So already there, he started to do a more free of form feeling,
Mhm.
going to the early classics. But I mean, I was looking it up and I found it so fascinating because you have in the Bourrée, you have a really elegant dance at the court in an alla breve style. So already
Mhm.
the sentiment is clear where you're starting. So if you find, let's say you go out in the countryside on the border from Germany where you live and you go to France and you find in the woods somewhere a piece of paper and this is a manuscript handwriting of a Bourrée and you can identify it clearly, not only that it says, but it's an elegant, quite fast, square rhythm. And you say, oh my God, it's really beautiful. So how I approach is in the sentiment when I interpret it, I must stay elegant. I cannot go too rough like early Baroque. Some pieces are really rough. They're really brutal, almost in their way, how to present them. We can talk a little bit why this is later. Then we have the Allemand, which is super slow dance actually. When you look at the pictures of an Allemand, the people are really trying to behave like ballet dancers when they are dancing it. So there must be a restriction of
Mhm.
fulfilling the parameter being allowed to dance in Allemand. Because when you fall out of the parameter at
Mhm.
Ludwig the 14th, at the court there, you were not allowed to dance. So we have to, make this clear for ourselves. There was a choreography behind that. Then the Coran is a country dance. It always starts with an upbeat, like what you played now, the Bourrée. So it's a really fast dance, which is light and also almost free. So you can really get crazy with the jumping there, the music jumping, in the Coran.
Mhm.
Then we go to the Sarabande. We talked about this really slow, really elegant, was originally fast, and then the chic from England, basically, which was imported as a dance with many many different characters. So when we start to interpret, we should have fun exploring the origins, why the composer was using this. And I think
Mhm.
that's something so beautiful that you know as I said, you go into the woods, you find a manuscript, you read this, and then by identifying the DNA of the music, you start putting the energy of yourself and making it alive again. And you not go, oh, this can be, a little bit loud, a little bit less loud. You're not doing it because of the sense of loud or not loud, but because of the sense how you want the people to feel when you play it. And I think that's a very important point. In the Baroque, it made all the difference. Baroque is coming out of singing. We have to understand in classical music before, everything was connected with the voice. In the Renaissance music, Monteverdi, everything was connected with the voice. The independence of the instruments started with the Baroque era. That's the Concerto Grosso was one of the great inventions of the Baroque, when you had the soloists playing with an orchestra. And only thanks to the Baroque, we could start to go away from the ideal of a voice legato. This is something also I find in the orchestras especially is missed a lot. When we interpret Baroque music or early classics, we have to understand that this is a setting the instrumental lines free from an original phrasing with the voice, with the human voice, which of course you breathe in and you sing, and then it's the perfect legato. So those elements, this coming as a base from the legato line of a phrase is very, very important when you look, the cello suites, we know it, they don't have the manuscript. We don't know what kind of phrasing Bach wanted in the articulation. So we cannot just say, oh, this needs to be legato. No, that's wrong. We cannot say it. So we have to find first, why did he write it that way? Before we can decide that we play it legato or staccato. But we have to understand that there was a force of that time to get independent of a voice-like playing. So this is very important. And then already it starts with the dances, everything. I find it so great. Le Nozze di Figaro, which was written much later, 1786, but Le Nozze di Figaro of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart is based on 70%, around 70% on dances. So Le Nozze di Figaro basically is a huge suite put in an opera form with all the revolutionary moments we have. So this is incredible. This music DNA connections is something I love and I really, need to feel when I interpret with my orchestras.
Fantastic, dear Sasha. I can't believe it. I would want to listen to you and to talk with you for an hour now, and I'm sure the listeners out there as well. Unfortunately, at IDAGIO they have their schedule. The next people are going to come. The next show is going to come. So we have to stop there. But thank you so much. That was so fantastic. Have great. I hope that despite all the problems the music world is going through, that you manage with the different orchestras that you conduct, that you can keep the spirits despite the constraints. And when I hear you, I have actually, that makes me very optimistic. I can see there is no doubt that you must keep them in great spirits. So all the best to everybody out there. I won't be able to make an episode next week because I will be in São Paulo, far from here, performing, because there it's the spring and the situation in the city of São Paulo is actually very good at the moment, and they have concerts with audience. So I look forward to doing this. But anyways, just to say, see you in 2 weeks, so the week after, with the Gig to finish the 4th suite. And stay healthy, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for having